How many things affect your life as much as slow traffic and bad weather? Listen tomorrow morning for Traffic and Weather Together every 10 minutes on the 9s on KSL News Radio.
We're talking about BYU's 10-win season that just concluded last Saturday night. Gosh, it was cold down there. I'm not going to miss those cold nights at LaVelle Edwards Stadium, but they got to 10 wins. Here's the word Mitch used to describe the 10-win season: outstanding. I used the word unsatisfied, and we're taking your calls to get your thoughts on the season as well. 801-575-8255. Let's get out to Dave in Cottonwood Heights. What's the word you would use to describe this season?
Hey, I'm a 50-year Cougar fan, graduated in 69. I think we had a great season. We beat Utah. We could, with a couple of extra bounces, we could have gone 12-0. But guess what? With a few other bounces, we could have been 7-5. It seems to me like 3 of those wins we were behind in the last 2 minutes, and I think that they pulled out some games that were close, and they lost some that were close. 2 losses by a total of 9 points. Whatever. I think it was a great season.
Thanks for the call, Dave. And, it's funny you bring that up. You're right. I mean, we were talking in the commercial break, Matt and I, BYU could have easily maybe had the season Kansas did in many respects. We're a really good football team. I mean, we all saw how good Kansas is and how they dominated Colorado. They beat Iowa State. They beat BYU. But they had so many one-possession losses. That could have been BYU's fate. And that could be the fate of BYU next year. So, to Matt's point earlier, if you get to the knock on the doorstep, you want to capitalize because you just never know when you're going to get to that spot. But I do believe that BYU having this success and still, having that hunger to continue to, you got to realize you got to finish the job. Like you showed what you're capable of, that you can win in the Big 12, take it up to a higher level. And I think that BYU's got to continue to add more depth in certain position groups, defensive line in particular, offensive line as well. BYU, I think we should appreciate a 10-win season whenever it comes because that is so hard. And to do it in a power league, I don't think anyone thought a 10-win season was anywhere near on the horizon for BYU football in the Big 12. You would have said probably it'd take 5 years to do that. They did it in year 2.
It's a great season. You can't look down on the season and say it was a disappointment because they exceeded expectations. There was a lot of great memories along the way, and there were players who were coming back next year that took big steps forward. Jake Retzlaff was one of those guys. You bring him back and you pair him with a talented offense, and maybe you retool that offensive line. LJ Martin gets healthy and improves. There's a lot to work with there, but it is painful to not be playing in Dallas next week, considering you were 9-0. It'd be different if you had lost a game earlier in the year and you were in the mix, but no, BYU is in the driver's seat late, Mitch. They were in sole possession of first place late in the year. And to have that slip away, even though they were competitive games and they were close and they were painful, to have that slip away could be something we look back upon and say, what could have been? Because there's teams in this Big 12, man. I was looking at this earlier today, looking at the standings, how things have finished in the Big 12 for the last 5 or so years. Texas Tech, man, they've been solid for a while, but they cannot break through, man. They're probably wondering when is it going to be, and I would hate for that to be BYU down the road when this opportunity was there for them. So it's. I think you said this in the break, and it's well stated, Mitch. Mixed feelings about this year because there were so many highs, and there's a lot to enjoy. That win against Utah, you have a winning streak against the Utes. They haven't beaten you in over 1,000 calendar days. I mean, in some fans would probably say that alone makes it a great season considering what we've been through for the last 20 years against the University of Utah. But, and I'd also love to know this. I don't have the stat and I wish our producer Nate Slack was here. He was busy tonight. But how many 10-win seasons BYU had where they didn't get to a conference championship game or win? There was a couple in the independent era, obviously. 2009 with the Andrew George 10-win season, but didn't get there.
That was TCU who won that year. 2008.
They didn't have a conference championship game that year, right?
No conference championship game, but they didn't win the title. 2008 didn't win. In that year, they didn't beat Utah either. I think that, and honestly, Matt, I think that BYU, had they reached the Big 12 championship game, I think they would have been blown out, honestly. And I think, honestly, it saves
by either team.
Saves the grief because BYU's trending backwards right now.
That's a good point.
I think that, you can now take a step back as a team and look, maybe they could have recalibrated and pulled off something special. But what we saw on that field against Houston, even in the first half, like that was a team that was struggling and looked like no part of being a team that needed to be in a Big 12 championship game. So I think that when I kind of rewatch the game and I just kind of take a step back, I go, this team just overachieved, and I'll say it's an outstanding year to get to 10 wins because had you got to Arlington and got the rematch against ASU, I think that could have been ugly, potentially. Now, maybe the rematch factor could have gone in BYU's favor, but ASU's just rolling right now, and BYU's not. And that's where this team, hopefully the bowl season, can really kind of reset things. And the group that does want to be a part of that bowl game, because you're seeing obviously players entering the portal. We saw Cody Epps, Micah Harper, Jackson Bowers. They're entering the portal. That came out today. The guys that want to be part of this thing for the bowl season, but then 2025 and beyond, I think this bowl season could be really valuable for the team going forward. But BYU is just not playing like a team that belonged in Arlington the past, in the whole month of November.
Fair.
I think that's where I'm kind of like, I'm okay. You got to 10. That's a nice benchmark. You still got a long way to go as a program to really get to the heights of winning this league. Even though the nation wants to discredit the Big 12, this is a tough league to win. And you've got to be playing your best football in November to win this thing. And BYU right now is not. And that Houston game was a great example of that. And BYU's got to get back to a place where they're playing a complete 60 minutes because we haven't seen that, I would say, since that Arizona game back in October.
That's a great point. And in some respects, BYU probably didn't deserve to be there based off the way that they finished the season. They weren't playing good football.
And Iowa State's not playing great either. Like, Iowa State, Colorado's flawed, BYU's flawed. They're all flawed. I mean, even ASU's got their quirks too, but they're just playing their best at the right time.
We saw, even at the highest levels of the sport, there's flaws in everybody.
Sure,
Ohio State
question.
struggled with Michigan to the likes we've never seen that Michigan team. So everyone's got flaws, but that is a good point that BYU, had they been playing their best football, and I think something that also hurts a little bit is that we never saw a full 60 minutes of football from this team. They were always chasing this ghost where other teams like Arizona State, even though it pains me to compliment them still, weeks after the loss, they did play their best 60 minutes again several times this year. They blew out Wyoming. They blew out Arizona. There were games where they looked great on every phase of the team, looked great for the whole game. And BYU was never able to put that together. Even though there were stretches of great complementary football, there's not one game that you would point to and say, that was BYU football at its best and what we need to be going forward. That never materialized.
And that's going to be the challenge, and we'll talk more about this, because we're up against it here coming up here soon. But, Jake Retzlaff, it'll be critical for him to take a big growth, and it'll be interesting to see what moves, if any, BYU makes with this quarterback unit. How do they feel and assess this position group? They loved having a veteran QB2 and Gary Bohannon behind him. You don't have that behind Jake in the future. Trayson Borghese had FBS experience at Western Michigan. McKay Hillstead started some games at Utah State, but not much. Noah Lugo's a developmental freshman. What do they see in him? Do you add another piece to complement this group and continue to push Jake Retzlaff and the rest of this quarterback unit? That's going to be an interesting question, I think, for BYU going forward.
Let's take a break. Cougar Nation, sponsored by Central Bank. News, traffic, and weather coming your way. And then on the other side, we'll continue to give our thoughts on where this football program is trending up and trending down and taking more of your phone calls.